And number 5, once you've accepted the first 4 and you want to move on, number 5 is action. And as Norma says, ask not what unity can do for you, but ask what you can do for unity.
Well, for me, one of the important legs on the table of life is volunteering. And so I want to share a couple stories with you. The other place that I have just a wonderful, heartwarming time is with hospice. I've been with hospice since '82. And I want to share a couple stories with you from my hospice experience. And they're old stories, but this first one I particularly like because it always makes me smile. I go up to this old local house with the chipping paint, and they let me in, and there are great-grandchildren everywhere, and people in all the different rooms, and they take me to this very old Chinese man. You know, he's about 130 or something. And there he is in all his glory. He's wearing a diaper. So they take me over and they leave me there, and I sit down and I take his hand, and he immediately starts with the 3rd degree. He said, where do you live? And I told him, and he said, and what do you do? And I told him, and he said, how old are you? And I told him, and he said, are you married? And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, oh, I got chance. The other story is just the opposite end of that spectrum, in that I go up to this house on the top of IA, and magnificent view of the ocean and Arizona Memorial, and it was the whole wall was glass. And as I come to the door, this wife, as it turns out, and their 2 adult children meet me at the door, and as they let me in, they say, oh, well, we're going shopping, we'll see you in a little while. And I said, okay, well, this is my first time there, so I go in the house, and there in the middle of the living room is this hospital bed, and this time it's an old Japanese man. Now he has on silk pajamas and all that because he's very rich. And I learned that he was a big labor union leader, so he was rich and powerful and had, had everything, that material thing that you could ask for. So I'm just standing there, and I didn't give him a hug, but I did hold his hand, and he starts. And we talked for a little bit, and just within the first 5 or 10 minutes, he looks at me and he said, do you love me? Oh. What can I say? I just met the man, you know. And I certainly didn't want to be glib and pat him on the top of the head and say, yes, I do, you know. So I took a breath, and I thought, who am I? And I am unity. So I remembered that I believe, because of attending Unity, that we're all one, that we're all beloved children of a benevolent, caring, generous God. So getting in touch with that within myself, I was able to look at him and honestly say, yes, I do love you. So, as I say, the story is very old, and the gift that he gave me was that it doesn't matter how old, how rich, how powerful, he was only here for 2 more days. I was afraid this was going to happen. I hate this.
Toni gets carried away with her stories.
So the gift he gave me was to say, the last thing we want to know is, do you love me?
When I first met Toni, I'm getting to know her, I said, well, what are you going to do Thursday? And she said, well, I have to go to prison. And I said, is there something you should tell me? And she said, no, they're going to let me out after. And I said, well, that's good. But I wondered, what would a beautiful young woman want to go to prison for? on a day that we could do something more entertaining? So I asked her that, and she said, we've been doing it for some time, and it is nurturing. Remember that word? And it hung around in my head for a long time, nurturing. And I wondered, is it nurturing to them or to you, or what does that mean? And why would anybody do this? And I kept asking, and she said, if you really want to know, you should try it. And I said, me? Why would I ever do that kind of thing? And by golly, here it is 15 years later, and we go every Thursday, we alternate. And what is surprising to me is sometimes it's the high point of my week. Because when I walk out of there, I think, boy, I made a difference. And that's what it's about for us. So to say, what's the funnest thing you can do? And to say, let's go to prison.
Let's volunteer.
Let's volunteer. Because what I've noticed is if you ever get depressed, and everybody does sooner or later, I find two methods really help me. One of them is, first, remember the things you're grateful for. I mean, everybody's grateful for something. We use this in prison a lot. Somebody will say, breathing. Boy, that's a biggie. You know, let's keep breathing. Let's be grateful. Life, vision. And then they get around to, I'm grateful for being in prison. And that always starts a discussion. Even in prison, you're grateful for being in prison? And they start telling us stories about their life that makes us grateful we didn't have that life. And that's easy to be grateful for. The other thing it does is it gets you outside yourself. Many times when we get depressed, we're centered on ourselves completely. And all you have to do is step out and help somebody else. And you feel totally different. It's a very simple thing, but it's very effective to me. And volunteering is that
Leo
way.
Biscaglia, wonderful speaker, highly educated, and he went around giving sermons, just the one I'm thinking of was on PBS, and it was an arena, like 10,000 people in it, and they use his talks when they're raising money. So he's up there, and his theme is love. That's all he talks about, is Italian mother and how she used to feed him and hug him and love him. And so he, at the end of the presentation, he says, okay, anybody that would like a hug, just line up right over here, and I'll stay as long as it takes. So he said, man, that line went out the door, around the block, down the street. And he said, finally, this little old lady comes up to him, and he gives her a great big warm, loving Italian hug. And she said, you know, my husband died 6 years ago. And she said, this is the first hug I've had since. Thank you for being here, everybody. We appreciate you.
Aloha.